Alright guys, we're back again in another session of GCP. In this session we are going to go through a Bastion host. Bastion host is basically a host which is in between the internet and your production server. So let's jump right into it. Let's get started. Okay. So the best practice for infrastructure administration is to limit access to the resources. In this lab, we will learn one method for hardening an infrastructure called a Bastion host. During operations, you harden the server by removing its external IP address, which prevents connections from the internet. During maintenance, you start up a Bastion host that has an external IP address. You then connect via SSH to the Bastion host, and from there to the server with internal IP address. You can further restrict access with firewall rules. Alright, so in this lab, we'll be creating an application web server to represent a service provided to an internal corporate audience, prevent the web server from access to or from the internet, create a maintenance server called a Bastion host to gain access to and verify internal connectivity to the application server. And before you click the start button, leave the instructions. Let's turn. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's create the instance first. We will go ahead and create our VM. And okay, create a web server. Okay, and we're going to take US Central 1 and zone is US Central C. Okay, and in the firewall, sorry, we're going to allow HTTP traffic, and that's it. I'm going to create it. Okay, okay, okay. We have the internal IP and the external IP for that. Now for rest of the work, click SSH and we will open a SSH session to that server. Alright, so we are in. Okay, so now we're able to log in. I'll just close the session. Now we need to restrict firewall rule settings for this. The default setting for a default auto type network is to allow SSH access from any source IP address. Restrict access to just your source IP address to see what happens when you try to connect from the GCP console. Find the IP address of the computer you're using. One easy way to do this is to go to a website and provide this address. So let's go google.com and search what's my IP. So we have this IP address. Okay. Now we'll go back to this. Now this will be referred as my IP address. Okay. So now we will edit the default SSH role in the GCP console. We'll go to VPC networks, firewalls, default allow SSH. Edit it, and we will specify the following. Leave them in settings as a default. Change the description to allow SSH from my IP only. Okay, and in the source IP ranges, we remove this, and I will add my IP. Sorry, my IP, which is this. Click save. Okay. Now it's updated. So now we disconnect to the. Now again we go back to the instances. Click SSH. Now when you connect via SSH to an instance from your browser, you need to allow SSH from cloud platform resources. So you must allow connections from either any IP address or Google's IP address range, which you can get from public SPF records. If you want to restrict SSH access to just your IP address, you need to SSH from a session. For this lab, leaving SSH open any connections is sufficient. Okay, we are able to connect this. So we're gonna reset the IP address range to before that. Go back to the VPC network. We'll click on our rules, default SSH, change this SSH from all IPs, and we'll click and save it. Right, so that's done. So we'll go back to VM instances. Try and connect to the server via SSH. Now let's see if we are able to connect it. Yep, we are able to connect it now. Perfect. I will install a simple web application. So we run sudo apt get sudo apt get install right. Perfect. So now we are able to do that. So now we just copy some commands so that we have the default web page. And just try and see, yes, it's working. Now we will restrict firewall rule settings for HTTP. To restrict access to the web server by changing the source IP address in the default allow HTTP rule to your IP address. So we now go back to firewall and we change the default allow HTTP and click edit. Now we say allow HTTP from my IP only, remove that, remove this and select our IP and click save. Verify that you still can have access. So now when I go back to my VM instances, click on this, I'm still able to open it. Now let's restrict access to the VM from the internet. Okay. So now that's correct. Okay, so now we'll return to the VM instances. Okay, go to details. Okay, we'll go and click edit. Now for the network interfaces, change the external IP to none. Done. Click save. This should basically remove all the access here, so that we don't have an external IP now. Let's try to access the HTTP. It shows. Since it does not have an IP address, it's not able to do an SSH. Now let's create a Bastion host. So we launch another instance, name it as Bastion, select use central 1 and use central C as the zone, click create. Once the Bastion is done, okay, so we will try to open up SSH to that server. Once this is done, we are going to access the web server from command line. Right, so we are inside. Now we try to access. Yep, we're able to see the HTML. Now let's try to access. When instances do not have external IP address, they can only be reached by the other instance on the network or via a managed VPN gateway. In this case, the Bastion VM servers as management and maintenance interface to the web server. Okay. So what did you create in this lab to serve as a management and maintenance interface? Bastion host. Correct. We restricted all the access to the web server's VM by removing the external IP address. We create a Bastion host named Bastion to gain access to the web server. Whereas normally you would harden the Bastion host by restricting the source IPs that can access the Bastion host. Just as you did earlier to this lab. Normally you would harden the Bastion host by restricting the source IPs that you can access the Bastion host by writing the firewall rules just as you did in this rule. Bastion host, you can shut it down. That's it. Thank you.